Okay, so this is how far we have gone. I thought we'll be able to do this on camera, but the fabric gave me a lot of tough time. So this is a lycra fabric. So if you want to do something like this and you're a beginner, please, I would like to advise that you use cotton. All right, try it first. Okay, or if you must use a lycra fabric like this, you must use candle or paper to sew, because it kept cutting the thread that I was using. Okay, so basically what I did was I first of all joined the inseam, the inner part of the trousers. I joined the back and the front, okay, for each of it, back and front, back and front. And then at the crotch, I had to pin it down and sew all the way from this point to the back. All right, and that gave us the shape. Okay, so turning it inside out, this gave us, this is the shape we have. So I've joined one side. If you've observed the inseam, that's because we didn't do it on camera. So maybe next time I have to do this, I'll make it on camera, so we'll see how I did this inseam pocket. Okay, so I've joined one side, it just remaining this side of the trouser that I've not joined. Please, with this you have an idea of how I did the trouser part. I left that side open because I want to do elastic waist. So this is my top, the top part of it, and I equally join one side and left one side. So what I will do at this point is, this is the front bodies, this is the front bodies. So you must notch the midpoint. So the next thing you would do is to bring this front. Now, how do you know the front part of course, the back part is wider, is bigger than the front. Remember, we added extra 2 inches to the back bodies. Okay, so obviously this is the smaller part. Okay, so this will be the front. So what you would do will be to bring the front bodies, okay, and pin it to this part. Oops. So I now observe that is this part I should have left open, not this part. So let's quickly join that part and then lose the other side so we understand what we are doing. Okay, so I have done the corrections, and the next thing I will have to do is to bring the top part and then the front to the front all the way round to the back. Okay, now because we are using elastic, we are using 2 inches elastic. Okay, this is about 178 in measurement, and then I've already joined this part. So to know the front part of the trouser, you know, of course, the front is smaller than the back bodies, because when we're drafting it, we added 2 extra inches to the back bodies. Okay, so you just look out for the ones that, for the part that looks smaller, and this is the part that looks smaller. So you bring the top and then you take the front. You must have notched the middle part, and then you take it to the middle and you pin. Okay, before you do that, since we're using 2 inches elastic, okay, about 2 inches, so you can do well to measure. I'll just measure. I can use 2 1/4. Okay, I'll just measure 2 1/4 around. Now from the front to the back, we're using 2 1/4. I hope you're seeing this chalk. With this chalk now, I'm using a different chalk now. So on the line I have drawn, I'll bring the top part and then place it on that line. Okay, so when I'm sewing, I'll use 1/4 inch down here to sew. So you can do well to pin that. So it means it will run. If you notice, I lose this part, so I can pass the elastic. So it will, you're sewing from here. Okay, I'll be marking that at the back as well, and then I'll turn it. This part is joined, so all the joinings must come together for the top and the back. And then when we're done with that, we'll bring the elastic. you know I'll be using, the waist I'm using is 34 inches, so I can use about 30 inches because I don't want it too tight. Okay, I can use about 30 inches of the elastic. So that's what we'll be using when we are done sewing it round. So we are going to the machine now. All right, so I'm sewing using 1/2 inch on the line that I have drawn. Okay, so I'll sew it all the way from the front to the back. Now that's before I'll insert the elastic. When I'm inserting the elastic, I'll have to sew it down at the edges first, and then this is a lycra fabric, so I won't need to interlock it. So I'll just iron out 1/2 inch so that the edge will be neat, and then I'll use that to cover the elastic, and I'll be dragging the elastic as I'm sewing it. Okay, so while you're doing that, you will need to be careful so that it will not squeeze or give you any kind of tension, and be careful not to sew it on the elastic because you will lose the effect of the elastic in the waistband. Now if you have to sew it, it will be static, it won't be movable. Okay, and it will give you issues when you're wearing it. So you need to be careful when you're sewing the elastic. So after I've sewn the elastic to the edges, if I have to cover up the band, I'll need to change the pressure foot. I'm using the zipper foot to do this. Now that zipper will help you to be careful of the elastic, that you not have to sew on the elastic. You know how it behaves when you're using it to insert a zipper. It will push the teeth of the zipper to one side because it's kind of elevated. So you won't have to sew on it. So that's the same function it will have here. It will help to keep pushing the elastic aside while it's sewing on the fabric so that you won't have to sew on the elastic. Like I said, you need to be extra careful with this. So if you're having issues when you're sewing, you can use candle or you can use paper. But there are some parts that didn't really give me issues when I was sewing, so I can just work with it that way. But when it's difficult to sew on it, you need a little wax on it for you to be able to sew comfortably. All right. So, like I said before, if you're a beginner, you might not need to start with a lycra or a silk fabric. You can try this with Ankara. I always advise my trainees to work with cotton first. It's only when you're conversant with how to work with cotton, then you will have some kind of patience to deal with lycra fabric or silk or chiffon when you need to work with them. Okay, so I'm sewing the elastic now and I've sewn it all the way to the end. And the next thing I will have to do is to join that part that I didn't sew. That part that is still open. I'll need to run the thread all the way from the armhole to the hem. And then when I'm done with that, I will need to work with the hem of the trouser. I'm not going to interlock anywhere on this fabric because the edges won't give me issues, they are not frayed. But if you're working with some fabric that will give you issues that, the edges will be frayed, you need to interlock it. So for the hemming part, I'm working with, I'm using 2.5 inches to do my hemming, so I'll iron the 2.5 inches and then iron half again, as we'll be seeing in this video. That's the part I'll be sewing on. That way I'll have a neat edge even when I don't want to interlock. Okay, so just follow carefully this video. I'm sure you understand how I went about this. So now for our sleeves band, like I said, we'll cut it on fold first, and then we are sewing like you can see me do in this video. That's the way you sew it, and you will notch the ankle point, that's the midpoint, so that when you turn it inside out, it will give you a relaxed, look. Then after you've sewn this, you will need to iron it. So then you now take it back to fold. And of course, we'll join the sleeves as well. Look at the band. Look at how it will look like. Okay, so you sew the sleeves too. I'm using 1 inch as my seaming allowance for the sleeves, and I'll have to sew the two sleeves. Now, when you're done with that, you will need to notch the middle of the sleeves as well as the middle of the band. After which, you will need to sew it together. That's to close the band. Okay, so that you have a single piece and not have some openings. Now if you have to leave it open like that, it will give you issues when you're attaching it to the main sleeve. So you need to sew the two together and it becomes one band like that. So, and then you will attach it to the sleeves. Now remember I said you need to notch the middle of both the band and the sleeves. So when you're attaching the band to the sleeve, the midpoint goes to the midpoint of the sleeve, the midpoint of the band goes to the midpoint of the sleeves, as well as the hemming part, the seaming part, the two has to meet. And then whatever excess I have, I'm just gonna do tiny pleats. Now you can still choose to do some gathers, okay? That if it will be easier for you that way. But of course, I can just do it this way. that whatever excess I have, I just split it at the middle of the sleeves. So while I do this, I'll do the same thing to the other sleeves. Now coming to inserting the sleeves. Remember when we're drafting the sleeve, a part of it was ½ inch lesser than the other side. So that part that is ½ inch lesser goes to the front. That's to ensure that you won't have excess around the arm cuff in front. It will give you a smooth wear when you're wearing the garment, okay? So the other part that is ½ inch wider goes to the back. Now you need all the stretch at the back for ease. All of this is for ease. Now, if you don't have any idea how to draft a sleeve, I have a video on my channel on how to draft a basic sleeve. Okay, so you can watch that so you won't have issues understanding this other part of the sleeves. So after you're done attaching the band to the sleeves, to the main sleeves, you will notch the middle. Also notch the middle on the garments like you will see me do in this video. Now the shoulder line where you join will not be the midpoint for the main garment. The midpoint you will need to hold the seaming part of the upper bodies, okay, and then you stretch it to get the midpoint. I hope that makes sense, because the seaming part on the shoulder line is not the midpoint actually. So when you've gotten that midpoint, you take your midpoint of the sleeve to the midpoint of the main garment and then you pin it, as well as the seaming part of the sleeves goes to the seaming part of the top bodies, okay, and then you pin it, and that way you will sew all the way from the midpoint all around the armhole, and that's how your sleeve will sit. So that's the insertion part of the sleeves to the main garment. It's easy, so you won't have any issues doing that. Now for the sleeves I had to work with, I didn't measure it round. If you're handling a sleeve and you don't want to have excess at the top that will force you to do some pleats when you don't want to, you need to actually get the same armhole for the sleeve to correspond with the measurements you have on the garment. That's where you will insert the sleeves without having any excess. But this one I didn't measure. You can measure yours if you want. Now I didn't measure mine, so it turned out that I had some excess. So we are done with our jumpsuit. I used facing to turn the neck. Look at the sleeves and the waistband. So this is the final look of our jumpsuit. So if this video adds any value to you at all, kindly like, share, and subscribe, and turn on your notification button so you'll be notified of our uploaded videos. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next video.